You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Friday, April 17th, I think.
Yes, it is. Is it?
It is Friday, April 17th. It is also a pajama day for school students today, at least for my son's school.
But that was just for school kids?
Well, I'm just pointing out that maybe or maybe not, that the whole family might be observing Pajama Day today. We're also going to take a look at the April issue of the Lutheran Witness today. Looking forward to that. And you have some tips lined up for us for staying fit while we're social distancing. Is that right? Is that what we're going to look at in the second half?
That is absolutely what we're going to talk about in the second half, because I think all of us need that, including me.
Need to move more. I know. I was doing great until they closed all the parks, and then, wow, that just changed everything.
It got rough.
So we'll get some great tips on that in the second half. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin. Thank you so much for supporting the Coffee Hour. And you can find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us this morning, the Reverend Roy Askins, managing editor of the Lutheran Witness. Good morning, Pastor Askins.
Good morning. How are you all today?
Doing well. And you, sir, it sounds like you're joining us from the is this the deployed Lutheran Witness office?
Yes, the deployed Lutheran Witness office in my dining room out here in Illinois.
Well, very good. Glad to have you with us this morning. You're kind of used to this working from home thing, right? Having served as a missionary, you probably spent quite a bit of time balancing things between home and all your work serving the church as well. So this probably isn't too new to you, huh?
No, it's not too new at all. In fact, we actually homeschooled our kids. In fact, the first time they ever went to school was this January, and they were in school for about 2 months, and now they're back to homeschooling again. So it's actually worked out all right with us. We're kind of used to going the back and forth of homeschooling and then working from home, because that's what we did on the field. So we're working it out. It's not too much of a problem, so can't really complain.
Well, we have the April issue should be in our homes by now of the Lutheran Witness. So we got a chance to study with Pastor Odom earlier this month, taking a look at searching the scriptures. But what's the theme of the issue, the April issue of the Lutheran Witness?
So the theme revolves around the resurrection. And we're actually kind of drawing both the title and the theme from 1 Corinthians 15, where St. Paul is writing to the Corinthians. And he writes talking about the resurrection of Jesus. And I'm going to read just a few verses here. Now, if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say there is no resurrection from the dead? But if there is no resurrection of the dead, then not even Christ has been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain and your faith is in vain. And that's the point. We're talking about the resurrection and looking at why is the resurrection important? How do we defend or explain the resurrection with those who might have objections to the resurrection of Christ? It's all kind of revolves around Christ rising from the dead and what that means for us and our life together as the people of God. We didn't actually plan this in light of the COVID-19 stuff that's going on, but the fact of the matter is, I think this is a great issue to be landing right. This is our hope, right? In all of these things, the reason why we are not afraid and don't need to be afraid is because Christ has been raised, and he gives that resurrection to us too, right? For those of us who are baptized into Christ Jesus, who cling to him by faith, our hope is this that he went through will also be our resurrection day when he raised the dead to be with him forever. So even though we didn't plan it this way, I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, it absolutely did. To have this joyous issue full of hope for us in the midst of, well, at least today is a very gloomy day too, in the midst of all of this kind of terrible news that we are inundated by every day. And
Indeed.
This is something, I mean, we hear about the resurrection of Christ all the time. It's in so much of our teaching and our singing, and especially now during this Easter season. What are some of the the new maybe things, or different ways of looking at Christ's resurrection that readers will be able to read and learn about in this issue.
Sure. So we have a handful of great articles in this issue. We start off with Dr. Gregory Lockwood talking about 1 Corinthians 15. Dr. Lockwood actually wrote the Concordia commentary on Corinthians, and he had a great little article called St. Paul's Finest Pearl, where he really dives into 1 Corinthians 15 and what this means for our lives as the children of God. How do we think about the resurrection of Jesus Christologically? I also want to say our designers did an excellent job laying out this article, and there's a beautiful icon in there of the resurrection of Jesus. And if you look at this, I didn't actually know all the details here, but somebody asked a question about who was who. And if you look at it and you dig in to what this image is about, you see Jesus pulling Adam and Eve out of the grave in this picture, in this icon, where he's got Eve on one side, Adam on the other. He's got them by the wrists, and he's pulling them out of the grave in his own resurrection. Absolutely wonderful. Just love that image. Very well done by our designers there. But you're also going to hear then a focus on kind of the apologetics in this issue, of the apologetics of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so Dr. Kirk Clayton spends a little bit of time running through how do the scriptures defend the resurrection. In other words, we look at Acts, he looks at some other passages and teachings of St. Paul that talks about the defense of the resurrection and how the scriptures themselves demonstrate that Christ in fact rose from the dead. And then we move on from there into a series of articles where Dr. Adam Francisco goes through and takes 5 common objections to the resurrection. In other words, well, maybe Jesus really didn't in fact die. Maybe he just swooned on the cross and then in the tomb he woke up, or these kind of objections that people have, and then gives tools to our readers to explain and answer these objections that people might have from the resurrection, why the resurrection actually did in fact happen.
I was looking through that article, and there are a lot of different theories that some of them, I mean, some of them I had never really given much consideration to. Those are just random all over the place. But I guess some of them are, as I think you pointed out in the article, some of them come from like documentaries and things like that, that just popular opinion, not necessarily anything based on actual scripture or truth.
Right. Right. And I mean, and you see this, I mean, like, so one of the theories is that the disciples, just took the body and then lied to everybody. Well, if you look at as Dr. Francisco goes through the actual historical evidence, both from the scriptures and from the historical evidence of the time, makes it clear that this is just, it's not really a possibility that it actually happened that way. So Dr. Francisco does a great job of working through these 5 false theories of the resurrection and demonstrating why, in fact, Christ did rise from the dead and what this means for us in our life of faith. Moving on from there, Dr. Sean Denzer, the chaplain, also gave us a great article on hymns of resurrection, and he talks through a number of different hymns. I know this probably warms Sarah's heart here, and the
Yes,
hymns that he discussed there. And then Dr. Bombaro gave some advice on how to have conversations about apologetic type conversations about the resurrection that can often be rather heated sometimes. How to have these conversations in love and in a way that points people to the hope we have in Jesus Christ, as opposed to scoring theological or philosophical points, which apologetics can sometimes devolve into.
And for listeners who may not know Dr. Bombaro very much, he has served in a variety of places and really has served in places with great diversity. He served in California for a while, then also served as a chaplain in the military, now serves as a missionary. So he served in a variety of places. So really understanding where he's come from, I think also adds some great credibility to what he's sharing in this article as well. Just a super sharp guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right now he's in Riga, Latvia, I think, right?
I believe so. Yeah. And I know that Sarah's probably dying to talk more about hymns, so I'll hand it back over to Sarah to ask more about the hymns article if you want.
Oh, well, we get a special episode next week to really dig into hymnody. However, what are some of the things that we can learn from maybe some not so well-known Easter hymns through this article? When I read through it, there were some that I don't always go to necessarily, but then that Chaplain Denzer points out are really good ones to sing about.
Sure. This article was fantastic. He did it rather last minute for us. It was really great to have him do this. In fact, Sarah, you're going to like. We actually have. This is a preview for next May's issue. We have another whole article dedicated to hymns, but wedding hymns and wedding hymns you wouldn't expect. So Dr. Binder got on and gave us like 6 wonderful wedding hymns and explains why they're wedding hymns, even though you would not think of them as wedding hymns. So you have that to look forward to next month too.
I'm curious.
But Pastor Dinzer did a great job with these hymns, these resurrection hymns. Awake my heart with gladness. We've had this one in our home. My little 3-year-old calls it "Awake my heart," and we sing this hymn talking about the resurrection and Christ's resurrection. Mary Magdalene seeing the Lord, and Pastor Dinzer, I keep calling him Dr. Dinzer. Pastor Dinzer does an excellent job of walking through these hymns and explaining the resurrection themes in these hymns.
Now, I'm really curious when you were talking about the lineup of wedding hymns. I've always wondered, would Stricken, Smitten, and Afflicted be a good wedding hymn? No, it's not in the lineup?
That did not make the list.
Okay, just curious. It didn't make the list. I don't know why. That was really bad.
He actually did. The other thing he did, he went through and he also gives hymns for the season too. So not only do you get a list of just great hymns that you would consider for weddings, but then a list of, if you're in the Easter or Christmas season, here's a hymn that would fit for a wedding also, and why. I mean, it was just a great article, one of the best articles in the May issue. So,
and then there's I think it's in every issue now. Is this just short, sweet little good word at the end, the benediction at the end of the issue? Who's the author for the benediction this month?
So our author this month is Mary Murby, a close friend of mine. I actually went to seminary with her husband, and just a lady and a great writer. Story of when their twins were born. The issues that came all was wrapped together with their understanding of the resurrection and Christ's work of healing the world in light of all of these difficulties and how the Lord provided for them. So it's just a great little article by Mary Murby, the benediction, the good word, to wrap things up for this issue.
There's a resources page that you threw in there too. Is that a new thing for this edition?
It was a new thing for this edition. I'm trying to get this into more issues. We'll see if this happens. But I think it was particularly helpful for the April issue because there was such an emphasis on apologetics. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of resources out there on apologetics, and some of them are not the greatest. So I was kind of proud of my title. Warning: more resources. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot of bad stuff about apologetics out there too. Thankfully, CPH has produced a number of great resources. We were able to highlight a bunch of these resources. One of those, of course, being Dr. Lockwood's commentary, which people think of commentaries as these dry, dusty texts. That's not the case with this commentary. You can read it almost devotionally. Great little book. But then a couple of other books, handful of other books, also published by CPH that are really great for apologetics, but keep us focused on Christ instead of, as I mentioned earlier, scoring theological or philosophical points. Just a great resource.
Very good. And that's the April issue of the Lutheran Witness. A little hint at the theme coming up in May.
Little hint at the theme coming up in May is we were originally focused exclusively on weddings. And then COVID-19 came along. So now we are doing things in sickness and in health and getting kind of both of those themes together of weddings and responding to crises. So
Very good. The Reverend Roy Askins, managing editor of the Lutheran Witness. Where can we find the Lutheran Witness, especially right now? It's probably a great resource to have at home to read while you're at home.
Sure. So you can find it at cph.org/witness. You can find it there. You can also get some of our extra articles online at witness.lcms.org.
Very good. The Reverend Roy Askins, managing editor of the Lutheran Witness. Thanks so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.